Good morning. It's Matteo and Mate, and we're this morning presenting the paper Battiston 21st that talks about climate risks and financial stability. Talking about the summary of the main issues of the paper, the climate change creates two main risks for the financial system. The physical one, that is like damage from extreme weather, and the transition risk, which come from the shift to a low carbon economy. These risks are complex and difficult to predict because they involve uncertainty, feedback loops, and interconnected systems. And also, traditional financial models are not designed to handle these challenges. And the paper also focuses on developing new tools to help the financial regulators to manage these risks effectively. Talking now about potential limitations. The first one, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Next slide. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Potential limitation.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about the first potential limitation is inadequate traditional models. So traditional models, like the one used in economics, aren't really good at dealing with climate risks. They assume things like predictable behavior and simple shocks, but climate risks are unpredictable, and these models don't fully consider how the financial systems are connected, and this means that they miss we could say, the bigger picture of how the risks can grow and spread all over. Talking about the second limitation, a second problem is the lack of clear and consistent data to measure climate risks. For example, tools like ESG, environment, social governance, which measure sustainability, often vary depending on who provide the data. They also rely on companies to report their own data, and so without reliable and standardized information, it's hard for the investors to make informed decision about climate risks. Talking now about the last issue, is the short-term bias in financial markets. For instance, after severe floods in England around 2013-2014, banks didn't change their approach to account for future risks, and they treated as it was a one-time event. And this shows that climate risks are often ignored or underestimated, and that leaves all the financial system vulnerable to future problems that could happen in the future.
Yes. Now, talking about the empirical framework of the paper, in terms of theory, the paper mentions two key concepts that was covered before: the physical risks and the transition risks. The physical risk relates to the direct physical impact of the climate change and how it will affect physical assets such as production and default rates. And transition risks refer to the shift to the low economy, which could lead to stranded assets and sudden asset price changes. The paper also talks about how there's a problem between the nature of climate change and the traditional macroeconomics models. Climate change are characterized by non-linearity and endogeneity. Meanwhile, models like the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium fail to capture such complexity especially the feedback loops and the multiple equilibriums that climate change brings. Climate risks are often not isolated effects, and their nonlinear dynamics mean that small disruptions can escalate into large scale effects due to the interconnection of the financial system. As mentioned in the paper, the financial system can amplify this risk further. For example, a localized shock such as asset depreciation due to standard fossil fuel reserves could affect other parts of the interconnected financial system, such as banks, asset managers, and insurers. Furthermore, climate risks are influenced by the behavior and expectation of the whole market. For example, firms' perception of future climate policies can impact their current investment decisions, which would further shape market conditions. Yeah. Another aspect of climate change risks that the paper mentions are factor risks. Um, Climate-related financial shocks can have extreme outcomes that the traditional models fail to account for. So long-term planning, since it is very critical, but the models do not account for the long-term plans, so they fail to capture or are uncertain around the worst-case scenarios, such as irreversible ecological damage or risk assessments, which just get very challenging. As previously mentioned, the dynamics stochastic equilibrium model fails to capture these complicated risks. The model relies on assumptions of rational expectations of smooth equilibria, and these clashes with the previously mentioned. However, the model downplays the urgency of climate mitigation by assuming economics can adapt without accounting for hysteresis effects or the endogenous buildup of financial fragility. There were mentions of alternative models, such as the stock flow consistent model, which integrates nonlinear dynamics, and the agent-based model, which incorporates heterogeneous agents and adaptive behavior. The stock flow consistent model captures the independencies between sectors and accounts for dynamic feedback loops, such as the amplification of financial shocks due to interconnections. The other alternative mentioned was the agent-based model, which simulates the economy using individual agents with diverse behaviors and adaptive strategies. This model captures emergent phenomena like systematic risks, which originate from the agent's collective overreaction to climate-related shocks. The empirical framework of the study included stress testing financial institutions using climate-related scenarios. The NGFS provided a framework that you can see on the slides to test financial institutions against physical and transition risks. NFGS emphasized that disorderly transition can lead to abrupt asset de-evaluation, which can threaten the financial stability of the system, and this aligns with the findings of the paper. The paper itself also examined the market's reaction to climate risks and policies through economic studies and the empirical assessment of the effectiveness of financial instruments like green bonds and their impact on asset pricing. But the problem with these bonds that the ESG ratings and the green bond classification lacks standardization throughout the system, which limit their utility for empirical studies. So there is no concise outcome. Now, moving on to the main findings of the paper, it shows that the impact of financial stability, the effectiveness of financial policies, market response, and the future directions that the researcher should take. Um, so physical transition risk will have major impact on asset price valuation, also on lending behaviors and the interconnected financial network. Um, a quick and unrecognized transition to a low carbon economy may cause financial instability, which can be further amplified by the network effects. Um, Policies like the green supporting factors, which are to reduce capital requirement for green investments, can unintentionally increase financial fragility unless paired with robust fiscal measures. It was also shown that carbon tax policies are more effective when revenues are recycled into green initiatives to mitigate the adverse financial and distributional impacts. Some of the papers also showed supportive evidence that financial markets are slowly internalizing climate risks, but their progress is inconsistent, and that green bonds and SEG ratings show promise, but lack standardization and comprehensive adoption. The paper suggests that in order to proceed, the industry needs to develop integrated macro-financial models that incorporate dynamics and feedback loops, and that the role of finance is facilitating or hindering transition to a low-carbon economy should be more thoroughly explored. Overall, the findings suggest that there is a need to move beyond traditional linear and equilibrium forced approaches by using models like the previously mentioned ones, the FSC and the ABMS. The research captures the interconnected and path-dependent nature of climate risks. The findings stress that the addressing climate risks require coordinated actions among the policymakers, financial regulators, and market participants, and that the empirical studies reinforce the need for standardized climate-related data and the adoption of forward-looking risk assessment. These insights that the paper lists can guide central banks, investors, and governments in designing policies and tools to achieve financial stability while addressing climate change as well. And the work advocates for aligning financial practices with climate goals, emphasizing the role of initiative modeling and empirical validation in driving effective policy decisions.
Okay, speaking now about the contribution to sustainable socio-economic strategies, the paper introduces better ways to study and manage the climate risks. These include new models that account for how risks spread and interact in complex systems. And these tools give the financial regulators a more accurate view of the risks and help them to plan better. Um, the paper, next slide please. The paper also suggests ways to use financial policies to support the transition to a low carbon economy. For example, green incentives can encourage investment in environmentally projects, while penalties can discourage dangerous activities. However, these policies need to be carefully managed to avoid unintended problems, and when combined with other policies like the carbon taxes, they can help reduce the climate risks. Talking about finally, the paper highlights how to align investments with climate goals. For instance, the tools like the climate policy relevant sectors classification help investors understand which sectors are more vulnerable to climate risks. And by shifting the investments to greener sectors, we can reduce risks, protect the financial system, and support sustainability. And this obviously creates a stronger foundation for a sustainable economy. So that was it. Thank you for the attention, and yeah, have a good day. Bye bye.